are these people?
Warning if you're, sensitive to sexual assault testimonies and things like that. This might be a tougher read for you. But I think it's doable for most people. It's just unfortunately this is the reality that's happening in the area. But this is from Robert in Inlakesh. Inlakesh. Gotta get that right. This is over in MintPress. Which I'm just going to use the full word. I know that word frustrates people, so that's why I gave the warning. But systemic rape allegations against Israel meet a deafening silence. So, as expected. But this is January 2nd, so, things have happened since then. We'll get to it. But he writes, a flood of devastating new testimonies documenting the systemic sexual abuse of Palestinian men and women by Israeli soldiers have surfaced in recent weeks. Yet, as these harrowing accounts gain traction amongst human rights groups and international organizations, Western media has conspicuously turned its focus elsewhere, amplifying Israel's poorly corroborated claims against Hamas. Following a raid on Collin Radix-Carter Hospital in the northern Gaza Strip on December 28, Euromed Human Rights Monitor published a report documenting harrowing testimonies of sexual abuse by Israeli soldiers. Eyewitnesses' accounts describe how female medical workers and patients were rounded up at gunpoint, coerced into removing their headscarves, and forced to strip naked. Witnesses also reported that these women were subjected to degrading verbal abuse throughout the ordeal. A soldier forced a nurse to take off her trousers, then placed his hand on her. When she tried to resist, he struck her hard across the face, causing her nose to bleed. A female survivor of the Collin Radix-Carter Hospital raid recounted to a Euromed Monitor team. Eyewitness testimonies further detailed male soldiers engaging in groping, beating, and forcibly sexualizing women, as well as ripping clothes from women's chests when they refused to strip. These harrowing testimonies align with a documented pattern of abuse. In February 2024, Euromed Monitor reported similar accounts from female detainees in Gaza. Among them, a 45-year-old woman identified as NH recounted how she was threatened with rape and told that I would not see my children if I disobeyed the soldiers' orders. In February 2024, United Nations officials formally acknowledged the growing body of evidence pointing to sexual violence against Palestinian women in the Gaza Strip and the West Bank. They confirmed that at least 2 cases of rape have been documented, marking a critical official recognition of the abuse. On June 12th, the United Nations released a human rights report that detailed systemic sexual and gender-based violence perpetuated by Israeli soldiers against Palestinians since October 7th. The report concluded that Palestinians have been subjected to a range of abuses, including forced public nudity, forced public stripping, sexualized torture and abuse, and sexual humiliation and harassment, both online and in person. And if you think that sounds familiar to Abu Ghraib, guess where they learned it from. So, par for the course. But in March, Canadian physicians who had worked in Gaza came forward with harrowing evidence. These are Canadian physicians, okay? Evidence of rape against Palestinian women, urging an investigation into the atrocity. So this isn't like the Palestinian women. I mean, some of them are, for sure, speaking up. But this is like other physicians in the area are like, hey, this is happening. So one physician recounted a particularly devastating case in which a woman was reportedly raped for 2 days until she lost her ability to speak. At the notorious Sid Taiman detention center, where Israeli soldiers detained Palestinian civilians from Gaza without charge, UNRWA documented a harrowing testimony from a female prisoner. They asked the soldiers to spit on me, saying, "She is a bitch, she is from Gaza." They were beating us as we moved and saying they would put pepper on our sensitive parts. They pulled us, beat us. They took us in the bus to the Daman prison after 5 days. A male soldier took off our hijabs and they pinched us and touched our bodies, including our breasts. We were blindfolded and we were feeling them touching us, pushing our heads to the bus. We started to squeeze together to try to protect ourselves from the touching. They said, "Bitch, bitch." They told the soldiers to take off their shoes and slap our faces with them. The Siddiman detention facility became the center of international outrage after 10 Israeli soldiers were arrested for the brutal gang rape of a Palestinian detainee held without charge. The attack was captured on film, was further compounded by widespread Israeli public support for the perpetrators. This support came from members of the government, media, and the so-called right to rape protests, which defended the soldiers' actions. Adding to the disturbing nature of the incident, Israel's Haninu Legal Aid Organization, which represented 4 of the accused soldiers, claimed their clients were acting in what? Self-defense.
For what? For how?
Yeah. Please explain. Yeah, I wish I knew. So
I would love to hear the mental gymnastics of how they would defend that. I would love to hear it.
Anyway, Siddiman was not alone in facing accusations of systemic sexual abuse. As early as January of 2024, the Public Committee Against Torture in Israel, which I'm surprised there is one, provided testimonies in a report about systemic torture. One prison, held in Ketzayat prison, revealed the following. Wardens would conduct searches while the prisoners were naked, placed naked prisoners against each other, and placed the aluminum device used in the searches in their buttocks. In another instance, the wardens passed a card in a prisoner's buttocks. All of this took place in sight of other prisoners and wardens, while the wardens took pleasure in beating the prisoners' genitals. Palestinian lawyer Khaled, I'm going to butcher that last name, an Israeli citizen, revealed a harrowing, I would imagine, Mahachna, account from a survivor of the Ofer detention center in the West Bank. He cited the testimony of a 27-year-old Palestinian inmate who was subjected to brutal sexual violence. And I quote, a pipe from a fire extinguisher was used on a handcuffed prisoner, forcing him to lie on his stomach, stripping him of all his clothes, and inserting the pipe of the fire extinguisher into the prisoner's rectum. Then activating the extinguisher in front of the eyes of the other prisoners. So, yeah, not great. The numerous reports by ostensibly objective human rights groups and international organizations documenting Israeli systemic sexual abuse against Palestinians are supported by survivor testimony, eyewitness accounts, video footage, photographic evidence, and admissions from Israeli sources. Israel's claims of mass rape by Palestinians lack similar evidence. In fact, several of the purported Israeli eyewitnesses making these accusations have been exposed for fabricating their stories. Israeli emergency workers have implicated its manufacturing hoaxes, including the widely circulated claims of 40 beheaded babies hung on clothing lines, and fetuses removed from their mother's wombs. According to a UN report by Pramila Patton on October 7th, one such crime scene had been altered by a bomb squad and the bodies were moved. Additionally, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu fabricated a story about 2 boys killed in an attic, which he used in his address to the U.S. Congress in July 24th. Kakov Al-Qaim Levy was given a prominent platform in Western corporate media for her civil commission, forced to investigate allegations of sexual abuse by Hamas against Israelis. Israel's most trusted news outlet, Haaretz, even reported that she collected testimony after testimony, despite later acknowledging that no direct testimonies had been taken. So, any questions so far, Care Bear? You know, I know it's heavy, but
no,
I can continue. Yeah. After the Hamas mass rape allegations spread across U.S. media and were echoed by Western politicians, Levy, previously cited as an expert, was exposed by Israeli media for fraud and scamming donors. Ultimately, nothing emerged for her alleged investigative efforts. A new Israeli government report submitted to the UN relies on second-hand accounts from physicians and healthcare workers who interacted with former Israeli captives but does not directly quote or name the individuals involved. While the report aligns with some previous findings, it introduces a new and striking claim. 2 Israeli teenagers were allegedly forced to perform sexual acts on one another. Notably, this claim was absent from the initial submission by the Israeli Health Ministry and did not surface during the year-old prisoner exchange between Hamas and Israel. Israel's claims about mass sexual violence lack any hard evidence, victims, or testimonies to corroborate them. Yet, each new claim is covered uncritically by the Western corporate media. On the other hand, mountains of evidence documenting the systemic sexual violence committed against Palestinians are ignored in what can only be described as a deliberate cover-up. So, which we're about to get to that UN probe, right? So, this is out of ScheerPost. It's by the Cradle, to be specific. Israeli officials have obstructed a UN investigation into alleged sexual crimes committed by Hamas fighters during the 7th October 2023 Operation Al-Aqsa Flood, fearing this would open the door to a probe into the rampant allegations of sexual violence against Palestinians inside Israeli torture camps. According to the report, the Israeli daily Haaretz Tel Aviv rejected a request from Pramila Patten, the UN Special Representative of the Secretary General on Sexual Violence and Conflict, to investigate the allegations against Hamas after she established that a necessary condition would be to access Israeli detention centers to probe claims against Israeli soldiers. So they were like, nah, I'm out. If you're going to do that, we don't need that. The clear concern is that Israel will be the one to be added to the blacklist of entities and countries that engage in sexual violence and conflicts, while the terrorist organization Hamas will actually remain off the list. Mia Shrakin, director of the International Department of the Israeli Women's Lobby, told Haaretz, which is just, Patton's office previously confirmed plans to explore a future mission to the region following invitations from both the PA, we're going to get to the PA in a segment later, and the Israeli government. So, Thursday reports comes mere days after Israeli prosecutor Moran Gaz confirmed during an interview with Yediot Ahronoth that no allegations of rape or sexual assault by Hamas on October 7th have been filed. In the end, we don't have any complaints, which was presented in the media compared to what will eventually come together will be entirely different, she said, adding that her office approached women's rights organizations and asked for cooperation. They told us that no one had approached them, she stressed. Multiple media outlets have debunked claims of Hamas rape on October 7th. Nevertheless, since the start of the Israeli genocide in Gaza, human rights organizations have documented dozens of accounts of the rampant sexual violence inflicted on Palestinians. In August, Israel's NGO B'Tselem published a report titled Welcome to Hell, containing testimonies from 55 Palestinians detailing incidents of torture, rape, violence, humiliation, starvation, and denial of adequate medical treatment, which I do believe we covered that, correct?
Yes, we did.
This report came days after the military police arrested 8 Israeli prison guards on suspicion of raping a male Palestinian prisoner at the notorious Sid Taiman camp. A doctor at the Army Detention Center facility at Sid Taiman, so this is the doctor at that facility, Professor Yoel Donchin, said that after seeing the Palestinian detainee who was gang raped, he, quote, couldn't believe an Israeli prison guard could do such a thing. What? When? You saw it on camera. You still don't believe it? If they maintain a hospital only for the sake of defending ourselves at the ICJ, that's no good, the doctor said. Which, like, that's what he's saying it was. That whole hospital for them is just so that they don't get called out on not having it. Following the guard's arrest, Israeli settlers, far-right activists, and Knesset members started riots breaking into Sid Taiman and the nearby Bet Laid army base in defense of the soldiers. Even after the rioters breached the entrances, no one was arrested or even identified by Israeli police. I wonder why. Closing thoughts, Care Bear?
We'll get to this later, but again, as I said in the first segment, the idea of a ceasefire, while it sounds good to many people who on a surface level have called for it, and think that, it can lead to more. The reality is, at minimum, it's the idea of, okay, some, from what I'm seeing online at least, not all, but some of the Palestinian people who were imprisoned, most, if not all, under no fault of their own, will be released. But there's no account of the torture that they've gone through, the pain and the ridicule that they have gone through, no accountability for what the Israeli soldiers did to them. I haven't heard anything of that. So the idea that you think that a ceasefire is actually going to do something, it doesn't account for anything like this. And I'll argue this has been happening for decades. This is not recent. So, okay, yeah, you're going to have prisoners set free, but many of them are so damaged that how they're even going to function. And besides all that, like, you're giving these prisoners, these, these detainers, Israeli detainers, the option to do it again, given the opportunity. Because again, a ceasefire is just that, is a temporary pause. So when everything starts back up, which it will, either these people that they let go will probably be back in there, or there'll just be more people to put in their place where they're able to torture. Rinse, lather, repeat. So it's just frustrating and honestly kind of disgusting that this kind of behavior is kind of encouraged. But then again, we do the same. Let's keep it real.
Yeah, go look at American prisons.
Yeah. Right. We do the same shit.
See what guards do there.
Right. So, to implicate Israel is to implicate ourselves. So there's absolutely no way that we're actually going to call out probably our closest ally, quote unquote, at this point.
Yeah, it's just sad and maddening, but it's definitely the reason we're demonetized talking about stories like that. So, appreciate any monetary help you can give by scanning that QR code, going to the URL ko-fi.com/indienewsnetwork. Appreciate any support you can give. Links are always in the description below, as they frequently are. And if you can't give, we appreciate just some algorithm boosting, liking and subscribing, hitting the share button, leaving a comment, letting us know what you think. And I apologize for the heavy segment, but otherwise, thanks for watching.